All right, Warhawk. So this is going to be kind of a quick, just a quick video going through kind of a recap of and a review over the Civil War, and then there's going to be a second video where I'm going to go over a bit more about Reconstruction, just in preparation for your test on Thursday over Civil War and Reconstruction. So as we, just to recap, we've got in the blue here, so you can see the blue, the dark blue, this is the Union. The light blue is also the Union, but there's a difference here. So the dark blue, these are the Union states, and they are free states. These light blue are Union. They did not secede from the Union. They stayed a part of the United States, but they did have slavery, and so these are called the border states, and they're particularly important to the Union because they have some of the largest population of any of the states in any of the slave-holding states. And so if these states were to leave also, that would increase the population of the Confederate States and certainly make them, the Confederate States, a more powerful and more populated country. And so Lincoln was very careful to try to keep these states in the Union. And then we have the Southern states, or the Confederate States of America, and they are all all slave states, which certainly includes Texas, as we know. Now, the fighting begins at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. It's held by Union forces. So if we go back to this map here, so if we think about here's South Carolina, but throughout the entire South, there are forts that that are the United States forts that are part of the federal army. And so in most of the states, when those states seceded, one of the things that happened was the army forces that were there kind of had to decide what were they going to do. Well, if they were primarily from the South, many cases they kept their loyalty to becomes they are loyal to the Confederate States. But if they were from a northern state and stationed in a southern fort, they were likely going to be loyal to the Union. And so there was some conflict almost immediately in many cases. Well, at this Fort Sumter in South Carolina, there was enough Union forces there, and Lincoln wants to keep this fort. He thinks it's strategic and important, and so, but he doesn't want to start the fighting. He doesn't want to be the one starting the fight, and so he resupplies forces there, but he doesn't start the shooting at the Confederate army that is surrounding Fort Sumter, the Confederates that are surrounding it. And so when he tries to resupply, that is when the Confederates decide, nope, we're not going to let you keep this fort in our country, that is this new country that they're creating. And so that's where the fighting all begins. Now, there's a few key battles in Texas that we want to talk about. So the war, as it says here, the war began in April 1861. The coastline of Texas was an important area to both sides. One of the strategies for the Union is to blockade the southern states. In other words, to stop trade from going into the southern states or out of the southern states. The main thing leaving the southern states would be cotton. And all sorts of manufactured goods would be coming into the southern states, because the southern states don't have lots of manufacturing. And so therefore, they're going to need to trade their cotton, in particular with Great Britain, to get the manufactured goods they need to fight this war. That does not work out very well for them. A lot of cotton is not able to make it out of the southern states, and they're not able to bring in a lot of manufactured goods. Early in the war, they can bring in certainly more. It's not as difficult. The blockade is not very tight. As the war progresses, the blockade becomes better. And so one particular port that was important is the port of Galveston. Union forces captured Galveston in 1862, but Confederate forces recapture it in 1863. You may have heard of ironclad ships. These are the most famous two ironclads of the Civil War era are the I'm sorry, the Monitor, the USS Monitor, the United States ship, the Monitor, and then the Confederate States ship, the Virginia, sometimes called the Merrimac, because that was its original name when it was part of the United States Navy. And those are the ironclad ships, ships that have iron sides, literally iron sides. Well, the Confederates didn't have enough iron really to do that in a significant way, and so they used two steamers, and they actually put cotton, all like huge cotton bales, not like cotton balls, like like they glued it to the side or something, but huge bales of cotton all over the ship to help protect it from cannon fire. And they are able to use these to help to recapture Galveston. And here's a picture of what a cotton steamer might look like. And so all of a sudden, once you picture that, you're like, oh, wait, I could see how that might help reduce the impact of a cannonball, of a cannonball, not a cotton ball. Okay, so that's the Battle of Galveston. Now, the Battle of Sabine Pass, and you can see on the map, so Sabine Pass is right here. This is also a significant one. Most of the fighting in the Civil War happened kind of further east, especially on the eastern coast in Virginia, Maryland region, North Carolina, South Carolina, and all around the East Coast, although there was certainly a significant amount of fighting around the Mississippi River and Tennessee and Atlanta and Georgia and other places as well. Not as much happened in Texas, but the Battle of Sabine Pass is an important one. Hundreds of Union soldiers were planning to invade Texas at the time. Only 47 Confederate soldiers were stationed at Fort Griffin, protecting the Sabine Pass. So, utilizing their precise artillery skills, the 47 Confederate soldiers, known as the Davis Guard, were able to stop the Union invasion of Texas and even captured 350 Union soldiers and 2 Union ships. And so the Battle of Sabine Pass was successful for the Confederates and unsuccessful for the Union. Now, a little bit about the wartime economy. The war brought several economic changes to Texas. Many citizens had to deal with shortages of food and other supplies. Many of the men were off fighting in the war. Many Texas women worked on farms and became nurses, teachers, or shopkeepers. Texas farmers grew more corn and wheat to help feed the soldiers and grew less cotton, which meant they made less money during the war. Because they could at least, but the thing is, they could at least sell the corn and wheat to the army. The cotton they couldn't sell. They had a hard time getting it out of the South to sell to anybody in Europe. And so cotton just sat in ports for years in many cases. So during the war, many factories were built in Texas to produce necessary war items, cannons, ammunition, wagons, blankets, shoes, and saddles. And so we see throughout the Confederate States, we see a growth of factories that didn't exist before this time because they needed these things to build the things necessary to fight a war. So we do see the economy of the South change as a result of this war. It becomes more diverse. More things are produced other than cotton because of this wartime economy. So the war ends in April of 1865. The war ends April 9th, 1865. Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrenders to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. It says at the Appomattox Courthouse. It's Appomattox Courthouse is the name of the town. It's not a courthouse. The town is called Appomattox Courthouse. This brought the Civil War to an end. The last major battle between Union and Confederate soldiers happened at Palmito Ranch in Texas, and it happened nearly a month after Lee's surrender. There's news that travels slowly still at this time. Now, there are telegraph and telegraph lines news can travel really fast in some places, but only where the infrastructure has been set up. Needless to say, in much of Texas, there's not telegraph line, and so the news of the end of the war has not traveled to this part of Texas, and so the Battle of Palmito Ranch happens after the surrender of Robert E. Lee. This kind of shows you kind of where the fighting takes place. We can see the Rio Grande. We can see this takes place May 13th, 1865. You can see the Union forces are here. The Confederate forces are here, and they're attacking these Union forces um, as well. Ultimately, while it is a victory for the Union, it is too late. I'm sorry, it is a victory for the Confederate Army. Mistake. I'm sorry. I had to think about that. The commanders actually did know that the surrender had happened, but for some reason, the Union commander decides he wants to attack anyway, and so this is a attack that happens even after the war is over. There's some other fighting that takes place prior to this in other places as news travels slowly, and also as just some Confederate forces that did not want to give up the fight continue to fight. But this is ultimately a Confederate victory, but obviously does not change the outcome of the war. Now, unfortunately, just 5 days after General Lee surrenders to Grant, Abraham Lincoln is assassinated by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater. Um, and it was a tragedy with unknown consequences. We don't know all the consequences really. How things might have been different had Lincoln survived. Lincoln was certainly a better leader than Andrew Johnson, who replaces him as his vice president, becomes the president. Um, but it's we just don't know what would have happened and how things may or may not have been that different during this period of Reconstruction that we enter afterwards. Um, so it is a sad day. Lincoln's assassination um, is memorialized by um, Walt Whitman in a poem called "O Captain, My Captain." Um, but one of certainly one of the big legacies of Abraham Lincoln is his is the Emancipation Proclamation that he issued in January of 1863. You'll notice it says September 22nd, 1862. That's when he first informs the nation of this. Many people already know about it. Many people within the government know that this is his plans. But after the Battle of Antietam, which was a Union victory, he issues the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves in the southern states, in those rebellious states, not the border states, but those that are in the rebellion in the Confederacy. And so, as he is known as the Great Emancipator, and he has been assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. And Walt Whitman says these famous lines. He says, "O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack. The prize we sought is won. The part is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh heart, 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 oh the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. O Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells, rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills, for you bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores a crowding, for you they call the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. Here, Captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head, it is some dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead. My captain does not answer, his lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm, he has no pulse nor will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, it voyaged close and done. From fearful trip the victor ship comes in which object won. Exult, O shores, and ring, O bells, but I with mournful tread walk the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead.